Welcome to the This Week I'm Into podcast, and this week I'm into whiskey. I'm your co-host, Pete Tyler. Later on in the episode, we're going to have my friend from Chicago, Blake Schweiner, join us to talk about his experiences with whiskey. But right now, I am with my friend and co-host, Paul Imbrugulio. Paul, you're going to have to pause for a second as I write down exactly what I think you're about to say.
No. No. I'm changing it.
Paul, how are you doing?
I'm already drunk, Hans.
Oh, no. That's not what I thought. I wrote neat.
Do you think I would have said I'm neat?
I'm feeling neat. I don't know. Like I take my whiskey neat. All right.
I couldn't think about how to act drunk, so that's kind of what I was going for. I thought my face was giving it away while you're doing your intro.
I'm drunk on vibes. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay. Dang it. I really actually thought I had that one in the bag, but that's all right. Live and let live. All right, Paul, let me hit you with something. A situation. You know that good old sci-fi machine we've talked about in past episodes that transports you to random places at random times?
Yeah, it comes up so often.
It surely does. So this sci-fi machine, it transports you behind a busy bar in New York City. You're like a New York City lounge. It's a little more upscale, okay? All right, you see people, ordering fancy cocktails, lounging.
I just watched a cool video, Hans, about a restaurant in New York I think it's called like Double Chicken Please. It's got crazy cocktails in New York City. Sorry, that's all I have to say.
Okay, we can say you're at Double Chicken Please. You're going to have to explain that name to me, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, you're a bartender, and let's say a cutie rolls up to the bar, all right? And you know what? Actually, let's role play it, Paul. I think that would be better. How's that? All right, so you're cleaning the bar top. The cutie comes up to you. Hi, bartender.
Is this like my girl voice?
Yes. Are you not going to address your patron, Paul?
Oh.
What are you doing?
Hi, miss. What would you like to drink?
I like whiskey. Can I get a rye Sazerac?
Sorry, let me roleplay as Hans. No.
Hey, what a callback. Listen to episode 5 Cocktails if you want to know what that story is. Anyway, Paul, you have the entire bar at your disposal, and this cutie, aka me, just asked you for a rye Sazerac. What do you put in that cup?
The only rye that I can think of is Bullet, so it'll probably just be a Bullet rye whiskey. Just neat.
Okay. What?
I'm not sure I love this role play.
All right. Forget it. Anyway, this lovely patron just asked you for a rye Sazerac, and you just gave him straight rye whiskey. Mm-hmm. Don't you think you should add Peychaud's bitters? I'm probably mispronouncing that. Don't you think you should add a spritz of absinthe? And don't you think you should add a lemon peel?
I think that if you're going to order something uncommon at the bar, you should be more than willing to explain what it is.
But this is a fancy New York City lounge.
You're right. Actually, have you ever seen Uncharted, the new one with Tom Holland?
No, I never did. Was it good?
I don't know. It's fine. But at the beginning of the movie, he plays like he's like a bartender.
Yeah.
And he just knows way too many facts. And I didn't think that you'd want me to be a bartender like that, Hans. So
well,
just played stupid.
Oh, that's what it was, huh?
I'm just playing stupid.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, well, fine. Okay.
Let's just be happy that I named one whiskey, it was a rye whiskey.
Impressive.
I think that should have been the takeaway from this.
There was one rye whiskey I saw that was called Rye Knot, and it was like the logo was a knot. I thought that's pretty clever. I kind of like.
You're the guy that buys beers based off of the image on the can.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I buy like double IPA that just tastes like absolute garbage. But I'm like, oh, like it has a shark on the front, so I like the art. So, that is absolutely me. So, thanks for the call out.
Totally
man.
Derail us. Yeah. No problem. I'm going to derail us completely for a second.
Okay, I'm listening.
I don't think I've ever mentioned this on this podcast before, but there was one time where Sarah and I went to a Total Wine and More, which I'm not sure if that's located, worldwide or US wide. But basically, it's just a store that has a bunch of different beers and wines and sometimes liquors.
Okay.
And the premise of our activity was to find you could like custom make 6-packs there, and they just had like a whole wall of beers that you could just like individually put in the 6-pack.
Okay.
So you could
Yep.
like make any random 6-pack you want.
Yep.
So our idea was that we had to make 6-packs for each other, but you could have like no input on what the other person puts in.
Oh, okay. I like that.
And you
idea.
had to drink all 6 beers, not in like one sitting, but like you had to drink them all. So you could put in whatever you want. You could like pick ones that you thought they would like. You could put in like crazy ones. I kind of went half.
So the ones you're picking for Sarah and she's picking for you are required to drink all 6?
Yeah, not at the same time. And like not in quick succession, right? But like we just like
okay,
like,
yep,
you had
gotcha.
to drink them. So like if we were both like having a beer with dinner, like we would pull one out and drink one together.
Okay, yep.
And it was really fun because
that's
you
a great
can like
idea.
because I picked like 3 that I thought she would like, but it was like a good idea to like try some new stuff, especially ones we tried to pick ones. We was in North Carolina at the time, like that were kind of local. So if we liked them, maybe we could find the brewery that made it.
Yeah.
But then I also picked some that were really sketchy looking. One which ended up being good was kind of like a habanero mango, like spicy beer, which was pretty good. But we picked 1 or 2 that were really bad. One, which I don't know what it was supposed to be, but all it was called was thick mint. And it was like a dark stout that was supposed to be mint flavored. Which,
dude, these Girl Scouts have got crazy. The thin mint to
exactly.
the thick mint.
Yeah. It was so bad. And then the other one, which was really bad but disappointing, was an horchata flavored beer. Because if you like horchatas, they're like a cinnamony milk drink. Super good. When you're expecting something somewhat sweet and you just get a beer, it's very disappointing. Kind of like how you get like a raisin oatmeal cookie when you're expecting chocolate chip. It's just like, even if it was good, it's disappointing.
Freaking astute analogy, Paul. Okay.
I don't know why I was thinking about that, but it is a fun date idea. Just
I love that.
Throwing that out there into the world.
Okay, Paul. I actually love that. Okay. Well, next time I'm in Seattle, let's do that, huh?
Okay.
Okay, I'm in.
Perfect.
All right, Paul, but this freaking podcast isn't about beer, is it?
You're right.
It's about whiskey, all right?
My favorite.
Stop derailing us. No, not really. Paul, can you do your best to explain what whiskey is?
Yeah. Gosh, do I know what whiskey's made out of? I'm not sure I do.
Uh-oh.
Well, like, I know that... God, I don't know if I'm drawing a blank, but I'm not even sure I actually know what whiskey's made out of. And I've been to like whiskey distilleries before. Actually, quite a few of them. Okay, wait, Hans, what is whiskey made out of?
All right,
like,
Paul. Well, thanks for asking.
Like potatoes is vodka, right?
Correct.
So what is whiskey?
It's grain. It's
just grain?
It's the same as beer. It's grain.
Oh.
But it was too obvious. It's distilled, so it doesn't become beer, it becomes whiskey.
Oh, okay. Well, that's such a fun fact.
Well, that's like, it could be barley, corn, rye, like you were saying, your rye whiskey.
Oh,
wheat.
Wow, Hans, this is like blowing my mind right now.
Did you not know rye was a grain or something?
No, I did, but I'm just like, it took me a long time to understand that like Cold Stone was because they like make your ice cream on like a cold stone. Like sometimes it's like so in your face that you're like not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I don't drink whiskey, right? So it's like, I don't think about it.
Well,
but that's fun. Okay.
Right. It's made from grain. It's aged in a wood barrel. That's another key important part of whiskey. And then it's ABV, I think it's above 40% or so makes it liquor. So I think that's
This fireball says 33%.
Okay, so maybe I'm a little off on that 40%, but it's just a higher alcohol content than, your beer, your wines. Like it's a liquor is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I remember, Paul, that this is totally random, but I watched a documentary on an airplane about bourbon when I was like 13 years old. Like, before, no reason I should have been watching that. Like, I just clicked on it, and it's the kind of thing you do on an airplane with the TV in front of you,
Yeah, you watch things you would never otherwise have watched.
And I remember in this documentary, they taught us the ABCs of bourbon. And if for some reason, this has stuck with me since I was 13. But fun fact for you, for something to be called bourbon, you have to go through the ABCs, which is A, it has to be American made. Now, I know there's someone out there that's going to be like, hey, wait a second, doesn't it have to be from Bourbon, Kentucky? No, it
That's what
just
I was
has to
gonna
be
say.
American made. It's not like champagne. It's a little bit like champagne.
Yeah, but broader area than
Right.
Champagne.
It's American, not necessarily just Bourbon, Kentucky. Yeah. So that's A. B has to be barrel aged, all right? It has to be aged in wood. So no stainless steel barrel aging. Fair? And C has to be at least 51% corn as its base grain. That's what makes it a bourbon.
Okay.
So I don't know, for whatever reason that stuck with me, but now when you go out and you order a bourbon, like I know you love to do, Paul, you can know. You can, you know what? Tell the bartender your fun facts. Tell him your ABCs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Hans, you might remember that I chased the old fashioned, which is, I think, a whiskey based drink from our cocktails episode. I
That
told
is
you that
right.
story.
Yes. Yep.
It's the only whiskey drink that I would order on the reg
There you go. There you go.
currently.
So you are.
Maybe we'll find out some new ones.
You are a whiskey enjoyer, I would say.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Okay. Well, speaking of that, what is kind of your experience with whiskey?
Hans, it's funny. As we've just been talking for the last 10 minutes, I've thought of a lot of things
Okay.
that I've tried whiskey before. Okay, so so I was in Ireland at the Jameson factory, actually, which is one of the little airplane bottles that we may or may not be drinking later. And in that tour, you got to try the Jameson. I think they had like a couple of different kinds. I'm not sure if it was like aged differently or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But they were telling you how to taste whiskey. So you know how like for wine, they're like, oh, you can like swirl the glass and look at the legs. You're supposed to like sniff it like this and like gargle it like, however it is.
Yep.
For whiskey, what they recommended is holding your nose to kind of like the edge of the glass. So sorry, I shouldn't cover my mouth. To like the edge of the glass where your mouth is like behind the glass, but your nose is over it.
Yep.
And breathe in with your mouth open.
Oh,
which
okay.
looks really stupid when you're doing it. And I can't remember exactly why you're supposed to do this, but it's supposed to enhance the flavor. You're supposed to be able to get more nodes from it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned that. So then a couple years later, I went to a different distillery. And I believe that distillery sold their whiskey to, I can't remember. But that whiskey maker had not Dungeons and Dragons. That whiskey maker had a Game of Thrones themed line of whiskeys.
I think it's Johnny Walker, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it is Johnny Walker. It's exactly Johnny Walker.
Okay. Yep.
So they had Johnny Walker themed bottles that they were selling to. So they had some of the examples, which was really cool because it was right when Game of Thrones was really big and about to end. And their bottles, when chilled, would say winter is here on the side.
Nice.
Which was super cool.
I love a good gimmick. I love when the mountains turn blue on the Coors can.
Yeah. It was really cool. So when we were there, I was trying to utilize that information when trying the whiskey because similar to like wine and chocolate, all of these notes or whatever you're supposed to taste have some sort of theme. So, they'll talk about, it's like earthy or cherry or chocolate or whatever the hell. They have like a circle wheel, like a color wheel basically of options. So we try it there. I'm smelling it and I would pick one from this wheel. Right. So it's a circle. So there's like opposites. And I would get it about as far away from the actual description of what this whiskey is supposed to be tasting like as possible. Every time. I think there was 5 and I basically always got it wrong. So either I'm like really good at not knowing what it is, but I don't think that's that helpful.
Wait, that's like a superpower, Paul, because if you're the whiskey taster, I'll just have you describe what the whiskey is. And then I know it's the exact opposite of what you just said.
Exactly.
Okay. I've done Paul, I've done one of those whiskey tasting experiences also. I did one at Talisker. So it's a Scotch. And it's in the Highlands of Scotland.
So what's a Scotch? Oh, it's Scotland. Duh.
Yeah, right. It's a Scottish whiskey is a Scotch. So we can get into it later, but I think there's like 5 countries that are particularly famous for whiskey, aka America, Canada, Ireland, Scotland, and Japan. But I was lucky enough to go to a tasting experience in Talisker, which is like in the Isle of Skye of Scotland. Really, like tangent, but that is like one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. Like incredible nature. and very pure water that makes incredible scotch. So
Yeah, they import it from New
yeah.
York.
But I was almost a little disappointed with the tasting because I thought the whiskey was actually good, like it was like quality whiskey, but it was like a Disneyland experience. It wasn't like a real tasting, I feel, because like we were all sitting in a room, and then they would like flash lights all around the room, and then they would play an audio of a Game of Thrones guy. I think it was like Hodor or someone. I might be wrong about that.
What?
And a Hodor would describe the tasting notes of the whiskey we were about to drink. It'd talk about like, oh, we use like the finest water from blah blah blah. We have the best, like this whiskey is supposed to imitate like the salt that is off the Scottish Highlands. Like, I don't know, just like really weird things. I did not feel immersed at all. It felt like a gimmick Disneyland ride. But the whiskey itself was really good. The one issue I had with it was like it was a flight of 3 different scotches, and it was boom boom boom. Like it was 5 minutes, drink the scotch, 5 minutes, drink the scotch, 5 minutes, drink the scotch, like full pours. And if you've ever, like, I don't know, had whiskey, you might be with me where I'm like, I need to sip it. I can't like down it in 5 minutes. And like, that's just asking to like, it tastes like gasoline is what I'm trying to say if you drink it way too fast.
Hans, you've really never been one to take shots, so that doesn't surprise me at all.
There's a little insight into my personal life is I hate shots. It takes I'm also good at with without peer pressure, right, Paul? Don't you think? I'm good at saying no.
Yeah, that's definitely a quality of Hans. Sure, whatever you need to tell yourself, buddy.
Okay, I want to say one more thing, Paul, about my experience with whiskey.
Say it.
My very first drink ever was a whiskey.
Really?
Yeah, I won't say when or how old I was, but I was on a backpacking trip, and my dad or my dad's friend brought a Crown Royal whiskey, and I tried a little bit, and it tasted like pure gasoline.
And that's why Hans's chest is so hairy.
Yeah, I was at least 21, by the way. Okay, Paul, can I hit you with some fun facts?
Some whiskey fun facts?
Whiskey fun facts.
Some fun facts with Hans. Fun facts with Hans. Wait, Hans's fun facts. Hans's fun facts. Fun facts with Hans.
Beautiful either way.
It felt wrong as I was doing it.
Paul, you probably noticed when you were doing your extensive whiskey research that sometimes whiskey was spelt WHISKY, and sometimes it was spelt EY, right? Ending in Y.
No, I did not know.
I
I never noticed that. Never
okay, well, pay
that.
attention. Start paying attention because that's true. Sometimes whiskey is spelt with just a Y. Sometimes it's spelt with EY. In the United States, you'll see it spelt mostly with an E. So it's a very regional thing. So in the United States and Ireland, you'll see it with an E. In Scotland, Canada, and Japan, you'll see it without the E. And a fun way to remember that is if the country's name has an E in it, then the whiskey has an E in it. But if it doesn't have an E in it, then the whiskey doesn't have an E in it. So there you go.
This is so interesting. So I'm looking at a couple airplane bottles of whiskey on my desk right now.
Yep.
And you're right. Some of them don't have Fireball, for example, though it says produced in Kentucky, doesn't have an E. I mean, I know you're not saying where it's produced. It's the brand. Okay. But that's interesting. I never noticed that before.
That is also directly like opposing what I just said. So
yeah. No, I mean, Fireball might not be an American brand, or it might be like they might have owned somewhere before. But that's a cool fact.
Okay. All right. Well, take that as you will. Okay. Other fun facts for you, Paul. This is coming from Ballantines.com. I know you love where my resources come from. So
yeah.
The earliest known mention of whiskey. Do you want to guess where it was?
The UK.
Yeah, good guess. 1494 on a Scottish tax record. Yeah, and they called whiskey the aqua vitae. The Romans did, who brought it over to the UK. They called it the aqua vitae, which means water of life. So yeah, it's essential to life. Not really. Please drink responsibly. That is not my actual stance.
Yeah, but that was before you could purify water, right? So at that
Yeah,
point, it was good.
worth it. Yeah, we know better
Mhm.
now, right? All right, Prohibition era in America, right? Can't drink whiskey, right? Like it's an
Not really supposed to be
alcohol.
drinking
You're
anything.
not supposed to be drinking anything. But some companies got around this rule. You want to know how they got around it?
Hans, I really hope that you're about to tell me about the old style. And God, what is that other liquor called?
Malort, Malort.
Malort.
Yes, yes, I am, and yes, it is exactly the same. They were described and licensed as medicinal whiskey. They were not alcoholic whiskey. They were alcoholic whiskey in the sense they had alcohol, but they weren't for drinking. They were for medicine. So the whiskey could be prescribed by a doctor, and you could buy 1 pint of whiskey every 10 days as long as you had like a prescription. So it kind of reminds me of you know that Key and Peele sketch where the guy's trying to get medicinal marijuana and he keeps saying the wrong
Oh,
diagnoses.
the wrong answer. Yeah, the doctor's like, "Do you have back pain?"
It's like nah, leprosy. Yeah, so it kind of reminds me of that. It's like if you had like a doctor you had it in with, you'd be like, "Oh, I really need whiskey." Like that's the only thing that's gonna cure me. So
So what I was mentioning earlier was in Chicago. I don't know if this is real or just something Hans does to screw with his guests. Is they say there's a regional drinking thing that you have to try, which is called the Chicago Handshake,
yep.
and it's an old style, which is like a cheap local beer and a shot of Malort. Is Malort a whiskey, Hans?
No, it is not. It is a
Oh,
liqueur.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in Chicago, don't do it.
Try the
It's
Chicago
disgusting.
Handshake. You take a shot of Malort, and then you follow it up with the Old Style. Both very historical Chicago drinks. You do have to try it. I will say before you get into it that Malort has been described as tasting like gasoline and Band-Aids. So if that doesn't convince you, I don't know what will.
Is it going to convince anyone? Yeah. I've done it. For the record, I did try
And
it.
also, by the way, in Chicago, I'm getting too much into Chicago here, but Chicago had that insane cicada year where it was like this one brood of cicadas and this other brood of cicadas hatched at the exact same time, and there was like tons of cicadas everywhere. Malort started putting cicadas in their drink as like a gimmick, so you could buy a Malort bottle with a cicada in it, and that was like a fun thing to do to make it even worse.
That's like the popsicles or the whiskey. Oh, wait, they do that with whiskey and scorpions, I think. Or is that tequila? I don't know.
I've heard that. I've also heard this is total tangent. There's a bar in I think I don't know Russia that does kiss the toe, where they put a human toe that's donated in a bottle of vodka, and then you take a swig long enough that the toe floats down to the bottom, so you kiss it, and then you flip the bottle back over. Nope, you're like I don't
Nope.
want that one.
Yeah, nope. Sorry. That's where I cut myself off.
All right, Paul, I got one more fun fact for you. Did you know whiskey is an official state beverage? Do you want to guess what state it's an official beverage of?
Kentucky would be too easy.
Yep, I agree. Kentucky's too easy.
How about Tennessee?
Ooh, Tennessee's a good guess, but it's actually Alabama.
Dang.
Yeah. They described the designation as produced using pure Alabama water and embodies family pride, independence, entrepreneurial drive, innovation, and respect for the tradition and craftsmanship. That is Alabama whiskey. Official state beverage.
Cool. I didn't know states had official beverages.
I don't think all of them do, to be honest. I think Alabama might actually be unique there. Yeah.
Way to go, guys.
Okay. All right, Paul. That's all the fun facts I got for you. Do you want to hit us with any whiskey resources? Go to your local bar and order a whiskey.
I guess. I don't know. Drink whiskey if you like it or don't. I had a fun interaction today at the grocery store. Getting my airplane bottles of whiskey to try for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that a lot of states have very different liquor laws. So that'll be my, if you're interested in your local liquor laws, maybe look them up because there's always some funny ones. One that I always remember is that North Carolina was not allowed to have happy hours. You couldn't have deals. You could have whole days that were different.
Okay.
But I don't think you can have like specific times of the day. where you had like a happy hour.
That sounds like a scam. Like that sounds
Well,
like
I think it's not. I think the intent is to not promote heavy drinking during a certain period of the day.
all right.
So like
Well,
all of Tuesday, you could have like an $8, drink deal, but you couldn't have it from like just 4 to 6 p.m.
okay. All right. Well, I think like if you really wanted to drink a lot at that time, you'd still be able to. So I still think
But
the
they're not
consumer
promoting
is
it.
off worse. Okay. All right. Fine. All right. I accept. I'm gonna say if you want to drink good whiskey, go to Scotland. I think that's
You're
all I
probably
want
gonna
to
piss
say.
off the Irish and the Kentuckians,
I know
and
Kentucky,
actually, and
Canada.
Japan too.
Yeah, Japan has great
I've
whiskey
had good,
also.
yeah, I've had good whiskey in Japan. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Cool. I think that's as good as time as ever to bring on Blake after the break. Welcome back, everyone. Now we have my friend from Chicago, Blake Schweiner, here to join us, talk about his passion of whiskey. Blake, thanks so much for coming on the pod.
Of course, so happy to be here. I'm Blake Schweiner, live in Chicago, currently going to law school, and that may give me more reason to enjoy this hobby. So, my hobby here is whiskey, specifically more of the bourbon side. Been indulging for a few years now, but picked it up over last summer when I had some time to go do some tours and things, and yeah, enjoy sharing it with people and talking about it here.
Brilliant. Blake, thank you so much. So, Blake, I have to ask, many months ago, many moons ago, I gifted you a little baggie, and I told you, this was in anticipation of this podcast, and I requested that you do not look inside the baggie. I gotta ask, did you look inside the baggie?
I have not. Beside the temptation
Wow!
to try, I have not opened it. I will say the little demon on the shoulder was saying, "Let's do it. They're never going to know. Try it out." But I have held strong and have not. So very excited.
What a good friend.
I'll take
okay.
that.
Well, okay. That's a little a peek into the future for our listeners too. Is we are going to open that baggie on the podcast today, and we have maybe some fun activities to accompany that. So looking forward
bag
to that.
opening ASMR.
But with that being said, Blake, could you kind of take us to the beginning? What started your passion of whiskey? What started this whole journey, and where are you with it now?
That is a really good question. So, where does one begin with any story of them drinking? So I'd say, my first interaction with whiskey was actually with a bottle of scotch. I got a bottle of Macallan. I want to say it was like 7 years ago now. It's been a while. And honestly, it's just really because I saw people drinking it. They looked pretty established, pretty cool. So I thought, let's give this a shot. People must like it. It was outside of my price range at the time. So I thought, man, this has to be good. And it wasn't.
If I can't afford it, it has to be good.
It has to be, right? Yeah, and I'll tell you, it wasn't. I didn't enjoy it at first. But when you spend that much money on something, you're like, man, okay, I got to figure out how to drink this, how I like it. And that's the story of bourbon. I mean, or whiskey, I should say. You develop a taste, you start to recognize the nuances of it, and you start to explore a bit more. So, had a couple more glasses over time and really treated it as like a special occasion type of thing. And I'll get to that a little bit later about that one single bottle. But my collection started to grow very slowly, kind of moved into more of the actual bourbon side very shortly after that, because I was talking with somebody and they said, yeah, if you want something that's easier to drink, bourbon is the way to go. And that's definitely like the tale of the two sides of whiskey. You got really easy, mellow, kind of like very flavorful bourbon, and then you got kind of the light, smoky side of scotch, on two diametrically opposed. So, I've grown my collection pretty steadily. Like I said, picked it up a lot last summer. Took a trip down to bourbon country, down to Kentucky, and got a lot of bottles. I'll kind of hold it there, and tried a bunch, and just had a great time seeing where it's all made. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's great, Blake. So your collection started growing. What got you interested in starting to collect, and then what has been like your favorite? What has been your go-to in your collections?
And I also need to ask, are you actually going to drink everything that you buy, or are some of them untouchable?
That is such a good question. I'm so happy you brought that up because that is the two different sides of those who drink and collect whiskey. It's really those who drink and those who collect. And each side has their own reasons. They're each valid, but each side really disagrees with the other side. So I myself am one of those who drink. I buy it because I'm really looking forward to tasting it and most times sharing it and experiencing it with other people. But there is a very large population that just buys them to have them. And it's kind of that human nature to collect and to find something you like and to get all of it, right? And kind of hoard it. So I am all over on like Instagram and TikTok of all the whiskeys, and you see people with these massive collections of bottles, and the entire comment section is, you should open it, you should actually drink the stuff you buy, whatever. But that's how they enjoy whiskey, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's they enjoy it by having it, and maybe gifting a bottle. That's a huge thing in the bourbon community, is finding something that you think is special and gifting it to somebody who you think will like it. So that's how some people get their enjoyment out of it. But yeah, so for myself, I drink it, I do indulge, and part of the reason why I started to collect is because I really like to experiment with different types of whiskey. So like I said, I went immediately from Scotch over to bourbon, two different sides of it. Now within bourbon, there's a whole different wheel of other, varieties, flavors, brands, everything. So when I first started, I only had the one, but I wanted to see how that compared. And then how does that compare to the next one and the next one? So as I've grown my collection, one of my, not my new policy, but like the thing I like to say is I never drink the same type of bourbon twice in one night. I will always have a different type of bourbon, just not necessarily to compare it, but because it keeps it interesting. It's showing me something else. I might be in the mood for something that's not very high proof to begin the night. After I've had a glass, now I want to try something completely different. Maybe I want a rye. Maybe I want, I do have some Scotch still. Maybe I'll try a Scotch later on. And it kind of develops as the night goes on. And I don't want to drink down a bottle super quickly by just drinking it all and then having it be done. So I like to kind of have the collection grow and slowly try other ones and see how they work all together. So that's how the collection grows.
If you want to try a little bit of this and a little bit of this and then a little bit of this, it sounds like you're going to get a lot of different bottles so you can try a little bit of everything.
That's how you end up with a counter full of whiskey. Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad problem to have. It's definitely, It's fun. But then at some point you start thinking, man, I haven't had that one in a while. And it gets to like this problem of you want to try more, but you really shouldn't be drinking that much. So, and that's a disclaimer I should also put on all this. This is going to make me sound like a true alcoholic. And I promise there are limits. There is, to any kind of hobby that includes the spirits. It definitely is take it, on pace, make sure you're careful with it. And you treat it as more of a social thing or as something that you can do to, like I said, experiment and try new things, not as something that you can do every day of the week. So it's not like, some of the other people that you've had on that you can work out every day or, it's just very different type of hobby. So, yeah.
Thanks for that disclaimer.
Disclaimer,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. Blake, how are you finding these different whiskeys? Like, what's your go-to method? Are you seeing them like online? Do you have brands that you like to follow and maybe they like put out new products? Something that I see a lot of are like really small distilleries like dropping whiskeys at like one ABC store that people like line up outside of. What's your go-to strategy?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is in the hunt. So there's this thing called bourbon hunting. And I will say it's a little unique to bourbon because of the nature of the distilleries, and there's a whole side of allocation that we can get to if you're interested. But essentially, these distilleries release a certain amount of whiskey to each state or each region, and then depending on if it's popular or not, it goes really quickly or it sits on the shelves. So when I'm looking for a new whiskey, a lot of times it starts in just scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through TikTok, whatever, and seeing people try new things. I am still working on a budget, so I don't have the ability to just go out and buy every single bottle that looks cool because there's a lot of them. So a lot of times what I'll do is if I think I see something that I might like, first what I try to do is find a restaurant that might have it. A little tip for any of those who are trying to get into whiskey is rather than buy that 150 bottle of whiskey without knowing if you're going to like it, find a restaurant that might get a pour of it. It's 15 to $20, and if you don't like it, you saved yourself $100. So that's exactly what I've done quite a few times, and it helps, but it's also kind of a fun memory of the first time you had it. You can, attribute it to a nice dinner you had. Going with my fiance to a fun meal. Now let's have a drink and see if I like the bottle, right? So I got some good memories that way. But otherwise, I just go to the liquor store, and another huge theme is the bourbon community. So you go to any liquor store, and the people there are generally very willing to talk to you and understand what you like, and are super willing to point out something that they would recommend. I will say it takes finding the right employee sometimes, but for the most part, if you find one that really isn't very interested, maybe they're a vodka person or a rum, they'll point you out to somebody who will happily. And I had a half-hour conversation with an employee at a Binny's here in Chicago one day, just because he was super excited to share. And I got 2 bottles I never would have considered out of that conversation, and it's fantastic. So a lot of it is just talking to people, seeing what other people are drinking, but taking it with a grain of salt, because if one person likes something, or if one person really doesn't like something, that's not to say you won't. So, if you have all intents of trying something and one person online says it's gross, try it out, give it a shot.
I really appreciate that, Blake. And I think, well, there's 2 things I want to dive into from what you've said so far. But one thing, I know it's super subjective, but during a tasting of a whiskey, what do you think makes it good? Like, what do you look for personally?
Yeah, so personally, there's different layers to a tasting. You have usually there's like the beginning, the middle, and the end. And usually it's like the head, the body, and the tail is how you describe those. So the tail, or the finish of the whiskey, is what I really appreciate myself, because it lingers. You can continue to taste it after you've finished, and that's where you usually get those really subtle, like caramel or vanilla, or kind of those notes. I will also put another disclaimer: I'm no expert in this by any means. I know what I like, and I like what I know. But yeah, I appreciate those that stick around for a little while, and a lot of times that comes when they're aged a bit longer. So when whiskey sits in the barrels longer, it picks up more of that flavor, and that kind of lingers longer throughout the tasting experience. So yeah, when you find something with a bit more age on it, usually that's where I like to sit.
Can you differentiate that, like, head, body, tail? What do you expect on each section of that tasting?
Yeah, so okay, usually with the head, it's you get it when you're first smelling the whiskey. So the first, everyone's always heard, right? You smell is 80% of taste, or however that all goes, right? So you smell the whiskey to begin with, and then when you take your first sip, you're going to get like a burn typically, and that's what throws most people off with drinking any spirit neat, or even with a little bit of ice, is that burn. They hate it. But once you get past that, typically on your second sip, you take one sip, you get the burn, take another sip, you move past the burn. The body is what happens when it first hits your tongue and you kind of going through the initial taste. As soon as you swallow and you start to exhale and let some of that air pass over, the taste buds, that's the tail that you're tasting. So it's kind of the 3 different stages of the tasting experience: the first smell, the initial taste, and then the lingering taste after you swallow. So
thank you. Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense. Can we bust a couple whiskey myths here? Because I have some questions.
I will see if I can help you there, yeah.
Okay, one thing I heard was when you're tasting whiskey is that you should take a sip and then pretty much immediately after take another sip, because the first one's going to taste, like you said, it's going to burn. So you want to get that burn out of the way. And then the second sip, that's really when you're actually going to taste the whiskey. Any legitimacy to that claim?
I think absolutely, to the reasoning behind it. I don't know about the method so much, about taking a sip and then immediately taking another. It's all personal preference. This is, it's one of those qualitative measures, right? So you can't say, yes, this is going to work, but
we're not trying to gatekeep whiskey
exactly.
tasting here.
yeah. So this is what you have to do. No. So yeah, exactly though. Like you take your first sip, let the burn, get it down, and then I typically wait for a couple seconds and then we'll take another one. It's not like you have to keep it, go as quick as you can or whatever. It's, I will agree though, the burn can be off-putting, but that's the first indication of a whiskey's proof, is the burn. The higher the burn, the more alcohol content, and typically the higher alcohol, the more expensive, the more, because you're not diluting it as much, so the more actual whiskey content you're getting there. So
Gotcha. And then a second myth I want to know about. This is one that Paul told me, so you can call him.
Dude, I thought the first one he was going to expose me.
Paul said that when he was doing whiskey tasting, I'm not actually blaming this on Paul, he held up the glass to his nose, right? And then left his mouth open to take the first
breathe in. That was
to get the odor. I don't know, the whiff. I don't know, the beginning of
Aroma.
the tasting, right? Aroma. Thank you.
I got you.
I don't know why I was struggling for words there so much, but yeah. Is there legitimacy to that practice of?
I will never claim to be any kind of biologist, so about keeping your mouth open, that is a new one for me.
Okay.
I will say when I was on the trail last summer, I had more than one person tell me that when you first smell a whiskey, you have to smell it for more than just an initial sniff, because again, the alcohol is actually going to hit your nostrils and it's going to burn. But you have to move past that to actually smell the depth and the nuance of the whiskey itself. So I had a couple tell me that try to inhale for over 2 seconds, and it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel like it's too long because it's going to be burning a little bit. But then you realize, wow, there actually is a lot of complexity here. I could say keeping your mouth open, maybe breathing out at the same time might allow you to get more of that circular breathing to get it through. And that might do something. We'll go with that. But
yeah, thank you. That's a very political answer. Thank you. Appreciate that.
I got you. That's why I'm here. So
that's such confirmation bias for Paul. He's like, oh yeah, that's definitely right.
He said the thing.
Yeah, he said what I thought he was gonna say or what I wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. I have, maybe this is a myth, but I have a question. I've been told that some people add drops of water to their whiskey. Can you give some explanation as to why?
So the way I've heard it explained is by adding a little bit of water to it, you're allowing it to open up, is the term I've always heard. I don't necessarily know the background of what opening up means. In my mind, as a chemist, I should tell you my history is as a chemistry or chemical engineer guy. So the water is just diluting it, and you should be getting less alcohol out of it. But what I think there is, it's just allowing it to, sometimes dilution takes away some of that burn and can help you actually get that complexity a bit more by adding a little water. There's a sweet spot though, for sure. They usually, if you go to a tasting, or some people have this at their house, they'll have a droplet, like a little eyedropper type thing, a pipette.
That's exactly what I've seen.
Yeah, and it's really meant to do 1 or 2 drops. Really, that's it. I've seen some people go to the sink and put more water in there, and that's too much. I think at that point you're just completely changing it. Or a lot of people drink it over ice, and again, completely personal preference. But if you're drinking it to get the complexity that the distillers are putting into it, sometimes putting a bunch of ice in it is just going to mellow all of it out, and now you're just drinking water with a little bit of whiskey. So again, if that's how you enjoy it, perfectly fine. But from a tasting experience, I think that kind of hinders it.
Are you a whiskey stones kind of guy?
I don't mind a good whiskey stone. I have quite a few. I think they are not all made the same, I'll tell you that. So I have some that I got on Amazon. Okay. They're stainless steel golf balls. So pretty fun. And they actually work very, very well. So they keep the cold for a while, but they don't dilute, which is why I like it. So I will say that once you are making something colder, you're losing some of that flavor. You're losing some of your ability to taste it. Sometimes you don't want it hot, but I like to keep it around room temperature, maybe just a little cooler. If you're cooling it down with a whiskey stone, it makes it quite a bit more difficult to actually taste those layers that I was talking about earlier. So it's good for when you're sitting down just to have a glass and have a chat with somebody when you're not looking to get everything out of it, which is perfectly fine as well. I do that quite a bit. But if I'm really trying a new one for the first time, or comparing some, back and forth, which I like to do, I probably won't add a stone at that point.
It's a very diplomatic answer, Blake.
You're going to see a lot of that, so
I love it. Yeah, no, it's welcoming, right? It's
there you go.
To me, I'm hearing bottom line is enjoy whiskey how you want to enjoy whiskey.
And if there's one thing I could convey today, I think that would be perfect, because I got into it purely self-study, just watching people online, learning about it as I go, and there's nothing wrong with it. I enjoy it. It's my own hobby. I kind of go along with it. There are people with any hobby, with anything you do online, who are going to criticize left and right, but maybe that's their hobby. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's for me, it's just I like to enjoy a glass of whiskey, usually with friends, and talk about it here with some more. So it's fun.
Yeah, well, the way I like to enjoy whiskey is by criticizing people online about the way they enjoy whiskey. So.
There's this great platform called Instagram. Go on there, you'll be with a lot of friends. So.
I'll find my community. Yeah.
Dude, it's real though. My dad was a whiskey drinker for a long time, and then all of a sudden he started switching to vodka, and he was sick and tired of people who were really into whiskey, like judging that he just wanted like cheap whiskey.
Yeah, and like why, right? I don't know. So
I think he's back now. He's found some new ones that he likes. But
good. As he should be. There's so many out there, and you were saying earlier about all these new little distilleries dropping them. There are so many distilleries popping up. The market has been incredible for whiskey over the past 5 years. So, it was a great time to join. Got a lot of cool new flavors, new things in the mix. So if ever there was a time to explore in whiskey, it's now. It's amazing.
Okay. Well, speaking of exploring whiskey,
Hans,
do you think it's time?
I think it's time.
Man,
I do. Let's get the goodie bag out.
All right. This was such a back market deal when I got this because I was at my apartment and Pete only had a couple minutes to stop by and to drop it off. So he pulls up to the apartment, gives me a bag out the window, says, "Don't open it," and leaves. It was it wasn't sketchy at all, I promise.
About as sketchy as you can get.
Exactly.
All right, Blake, before you open it, I want to ask you, what do you think is in the bag?
I really hope it's whiskey.
That's a great guess.
Imagine if I said vodka, right? Like that. Wrap it up,
end the podcast right now.
And it's good run. No, yeah. I mean, I really have no. The heft feels like it might be a little. I haven't squeezed it. Haven't done anything besides lift it. So it feels like it could be like a little bottle of some sort. But I'm excited to see. So.
All right. Well, Blake, will you reach in and pull out the first thing you feel?
First thing I feel. All right, here's that bag opening ASMR we promised. Oh, okay, there's not just one. All right, we got a little bottle of Jameson.
We got a little bottle of Jameson.
Good old Irish whiskey. Look at that.
So, Blake, I have a request for you. If you wouldn't mind, could you lead me and Paul through a whiskey tasting with the bottle of Jameson?
Okay. I would be happy to.
The airplane bottle here.
Try this.
So just for our listeners, Blake pulled out a little airplane bottle of Jameson whiskey out of his goodie bag that I gave him. And then me and Paul, in preparation, also have bought a little bottle of Jameson with us. So we're all ready for our tasting together.
Oh man, this is going to be fantastic. I really hope Jameson doesn't reach out to me and say, "What are you doing?" Because
our brand. What are you doing to our brand?
And I have a Jameson shot glass.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect.
Wow. It's like they're a full-on sponsor. This is fantastic.
But legally they don't sponsor us.
Okay. But legally, right.
Yeah. As our lawyer.
Sure. Yes. I think we agree to that.
Legally not a lawyer.
Our legal counsel. Yeah.
Our legal not a lawyer.
All right. So first step with a tasting. A lot of people who are like really, really into it, like they call them the super tasters, those who can like get every single level of it, will tell you to let the whiskey open up. That's what I was telling you about the water earlier. So, a little shooter like this, I am, first of all, little credit to the packaging here. It is actually glass, which is very impressive for like an airplane type shooter.
There's some good ASMR for you. Tapping the glass.
There you go. Yep, it is nice. So, first thing you're going to do is pour it into your glass of choice. I'm going to use a rocks glass here.
I need a glass.
Oh. Was Pete just going to drink it right from the shooter, or?
I didn't think that one through.
First
step,
don't
glass.
Drink it right from the bottle. I'll tell you that.
Okay, Jameson is still cool with you right now.
Perfect.
I'm changing it up. I wanted a cooler glass.
Ooh, what is that?
It's a Seattle map.
That is amazing. Very nice. Yeah, so pour it in your glass, swirl it around a little bit, let it get to some air, and let some oxygen hit that. Sure to open it up a little bit. And
do people look for legs on this like they do wine?
I mean, the thing with the
The
hard
answer could be
spirit,
no.
it depends. So the thing with the hard spirit is there's going to be legs. It's when you get up to like the really high proof 120, 125 that you'll see some really decent. That's going to sound weird. I
Some
almost
decent
said,
legs.
yeah, I almost
Some
said
really
some
nice
decent
legs.
Yeah, that
Nice,
might be tough. Jameson, sorry. But no, you can still kind of see it there. It's nice. So yeah. But yeah, I'm already seeing you guys starting to smell it a little bit. That's fantastic. You definitely want to smell it. Like I said, I see Paul's got his mouth open and everything. Yeah,
I was trying the 2-second thing that you were talking about.
Yeah, so it's going to start out basically smelling like just alcohol. And by the end, you're going to start to smell some of that oak, maybe a little bit of like caramel or vanilla there.
I'm getting alcohol.
Yeah, I'm coughing.
Okay, so I see Pete sticking his entire nose in there. Don't do that. You want to like, you're kind of
Calm
hovering
out.
up a little bit, like,
Okay.
like just let it come to you. Don't, don't necessarily like stick your nose in the liquid.
Spoken like a true chemist.
There you go. Yeah, waft it. You got to waft it. No, don't
Waft.
actually waft it. You will get nothing that way. But yeah, so I mean, right off the bat, it smells pretty good. Not getting a whole lot of like deep oak though. It's still smelling. I mean, I've obviously had Jameson before, so it smells more like the Irish whiskey side that I'm expecting here. So Jameson is like your stereotypical Irish whiskey. It's distilled 3 times. It's a very common thing for Irish whiskey. I believe it's mainly known for being for how smooth it is. So typically when you go to like a bourbon or like a Tennessee whiskey, you're gonna get a little bit of that bite that like it's gonna hit you. It's gonna hit the back of your throat, and you might almost like cough a little bit or have the urge to cough. With Jameson, it should go pretty smooth. And a lot of times they have that as a testament to their 3 times distilled, right? It even says it like right on the bottle right here. So, yeah, made since 1780. That's amazing. So what is this? Probably 40%. So whiskey has a crazy range of proof or ABV. For those of you who don't know, proof is just double the ABV. So 80 proof is 40%. So here we're drinking an 80 proof, 40% whiskey. They go anywhere up to 135 proof, which is 76.5. So or 77.5. So crazy. Yeah, those will get you. So at 80 proof, it's really going to be pretty smooth, pretty mellow. But when you're drinking it now, you've done your sniff. You got kind of the initial. That's your first. I guess you can also look at it and see the color. It's definitely like a light brown for sure.
I'm getting it looks like honey.
That's a really good way to put it, actually. Yeah, because I mean, and it sounds.
Oh wow, thank you.
No, it honestly is, because honey is definitely on the lighter side of that brown, almost orange, right? There's some whiskeys out there. I actually have some on my desk here that you're talking much darker. So when you compare the two, it really it runs a full spectrum. So, yeah. So as you're drinking it, make sure that your nose actually gets involved. Don't just like plug your nose and drink it, right? So the way I usually do it is I will kind of smell it as I'm putting it to my mouth. I'll take a drink, and some people swirl it around. Some people like swish it back and forth in their mouth to make sure it gets all of their full tongue. With your first sip, again, you're going to feel a little bit of that burn. So I'd probably just go ahead and swallow it. And then when you come back for seconds, maybe give it a little swish back and forth, left to right over your tongue. Swallow it, and then breathe out your nose. Okay? And you should start to actually taste some of those tail flavors that you're going to get there. So try that out.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Yep, first one definitely burns.
And that's another thing, like as you get to drinking more whiskey, for better or for worse, the burn just doesn't bother you at all. So this is actually a very, very light whiskey, in my opinion. My sweet spot is around the 100 to 110. So
okay,
that's yeah. Oh, there's the cough. Yeah.
Also,
Yep.
I would say, I think head I actually got a little sweet. I feel like body I got burn, and then tail I got sweet again. So
it just burns.
And Paul's like, it just burned the whole time.
All right, let's go back for one more little one and take a decent sized sip. Don't just let it touch your tongue. Take a decent sized sip.
right.
Okay.
Swish it back and forth, and then swallow and exhale for a good couple seconds until you start to lose some of that flavor. All right. Anything different that time?
The middle part did not burn as much.
There you
Less
go.
harsh. A lot less harsh.
Yeah. And as you start to get through the glass, you're going to taste different things toward the bottom of the glass because now you're missing almost all the burn by the end, and you're starting to taste some things you may have missed at the beginning.
You know what? I think it really tastes like Hans.
Wow.
Very peaty.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
That was a top level joke.
That was great. I don't taste peat at all.
And it's more of a Scotch thing probably with the peat.
Yeah, no, I don't know what peat tastes like. It was just
okay.
Something I'd heard.
Well, not to put you on blast too hard, but yeah, Scotch is known for their peats. Peat is used in the drying process for Scotch. They dry the barley that way, basically by tossing all the peat, which is basically like vegetation. It's like old decomposed vegetation. They put it in the fires to dry out the barley, and that's how you get that smokiness that everyone associates with Scotch. So they have peated Scotch, and they also have non-peated Scotch for those that don't like it. But
I was just confident that was a Jameson thing.
I mean, you're not far off. But when you're talking to Irish people and Scottish people, there might be a little bit of a war there. So be careful.
Oh, yeah, I won't.
Uh-oh. Can of worms.
Yeah.
Two things I'll mention here. So there's something called the mouthfeel. It's definitely a weird word, but this is something that's associated with whiskey and a lot of times beer as well, the mouthfeel. It really has to do with the viscosity or how it feels when you're drinking it. To me, this has a very light mouthfeel. It's very close to water, in my opinion, when I'm drinking it. Sometimes when you're drinking whiskey, it almost has it feels like syrup. Not because it is thick, but just because of the way it kind of interacts with your mouth and as you're going through the tasting. The second thing is I don't taste a whole lot on the back end, on the finish. The finish is pretty short on this one. Right now, I really don't taste any of it, and it's been probably a minute or two, and I think it went away a little while ago. So a couple of things to note as you're trying more. Just think about when you're getting the taste, how long it lingers, what you're tasting at different times. And yeah, it's kind of cool to see how that goes through the process.
Very nice, Blake. I feel like I'm learning a lot.
Well, I hope so, because I don't know if I'm sharing a lot. So.
All right, well, let us share with you the next thing in your goodie bag.
Please. I do have a request, Blake.
Yes.
When you reach down into the goodie bag, if you squeeze the bottle and it feels compressible, don't grab that one.
Don't grab that one.
Okay.
Okay.
They all feel compressible to me.
No, well, like the glass bottle, right, of Jameson. Not compressible. It's glass.
He's just that strong.
Oh.
Maybe Paul's just that strong.
No, I only have plastic.
Oh, very nice. Okay. Okay, well, never mind. Just do your best, Blake. Whatever you pull out next is fine.
Okay, I'm going to agree with Paul on this one, that they are all compressible. So, I have two...
Mine are square. I think the ones you want are square.
Okay, I have two
So
square.
are mine. Okay, go for one of the squares.
One of the squares. All right, and... Jack Daniel's Tennessee Honey.
Jack Daniel's.
Jack
Tennessee
Daniels.
Honey.
Oh, I bought the wrong one. Okay, that's fine.
Oh, Paul's got regular Jack Daniels.
You're going to have a very different tasting experience here.
Dang. Oh, okay. The honey one sounds good.
It is good, having tried it before, but we'll try this one in the little bottle.
And Blake, I'm gonna tell you this is probably criminal. I'm gonna just pour all of them into the same glass.
That's all right, as long as you don't pour them on top of each other.
No, it's empty.
Good.
Well, Blake, infinity bottle. Let's get into that later. But
yeah, don't let me forget that.
How do you feel? Yeah, what's your thoughts on blended whiskeys versus like single?
Yeah, I mean, they each have their own. So blended really comes in with like the Scotch side of that as well. So you have like single malt Scotch, and there's some pretty strict regulations on Scotch. So when you hear single malt Scotch, it means it's all coming from the same distillery. When you hear single grain Scotch, it's even more strict. I have it here somewhere. But yeah, single grain, single malt, both mean same distillery. Single grain is a little bit more stringent. And then blended just means it's a blend of different distilleries kind of bringing their stuff together, or different types of Scotch coming together. So I don't delve a whole lot into that to know the differences, the nuances there. But now on the bourbon side, there is a whole different other scale of like blends or single barrels and stuff like that. So single barrel is exactly what it sounds. Everything in your bottle came from one barrel. There's something called full proof or barrel strength, which is basically they take it from the barrel, put it right into the bottle. So it's really high proof, typically around the 115 to 130 proof. There's something called small batch, which is basically just like your run of the mill standard. That's like the base that most distilleries have. They usually take anywhere from 20 to 100 barrels, put them all in one big tank, and then they bottle it from there. So it's like they call it a small batch, even though it could be a very, very large batch in your mind. But yeah, so each brand will typically have a small batch variety, a single barrel variety, a full proof variety, or a barrel strength variety. And the last two basically mean they're not watering it down or diluting it to get down in proof.
Oh, interesting. So they actually dilute it down to 40% or whatever. Like this one I'm holding is 40%.
Yeah.
They'll just dilute that with water to make it.
Yep. So when whiskey's first distilled, it's actually around the 140 to 150 mark in terms of the proof. So around almost 75% alcohol. But that would absolutely kill your throat if you try to drink that, right? It's like basically like acid at that point. So they dilute it way, way, way down. So if you think about it, if you're trying to go from 150 proof down to, let's just make it easy, 75 proof, you have to add that much water. So if you have 100 gallons, you have to add 100 gallons of water. And that's usually good from the distillery standpoint because they can get twice the amount of bottles out of that one batch. So that's why price goes up as you get to a single barrel or straight from the barrel or full proof or any of that, because they can't use as much water. They can't get as many bottles out of it, but they have to get the same revenue out of that barrel. Right.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely an economics type deal there. So
I didn't know that. Thank you for sharing.
I got you. Yeah. Shall we dive into our Jack Daniels?
Please. Hey guys, Pete here. Huge thank you for listening to this week's episode of the This Week I'm Into podcast. And a huge shout out to Blake for sharing his passion on whiskey. If you are a keen listener, you may notice that this says episode part 1. Yes, we had so much fun talking with Blake and we had so much to get into that we decided to split this episode into 2 parts. So please join us again next week as we dive further into the world of whiskey and finish our whiskey tasting together. As always, you can follow us at This Week I'm Into on Instagram or send us an email at thisweekiminto@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
Welcome to the This Week I'm Into podcast, the only podcast dedicated to a completely objective, totally unbiased analysis of the This Week I'm Into podcast. Co-hosted by Sarah and Ryder, and I'm Sarah, Paul's girlfriend.
And I'm Ryder, Paul's lover. And by objective, we mean we're in love with Paul.
Deeply.
Passionately.
Some might say it's unhealthy, but we say it's unbiased good journalism.
Each week, we'll break down the latest episode, discuss hard-hitting topics, like why Paul should get more airtime.
Way more airtime.
And rank our favorite episodes of This Week I'm Into. Like, remember that fermentation episode? That was pretty good.
Yeah. I can't remember who the guest was, but they were incredible.
It was me.
Oh. Well, still a great episode.
We'll also take a deep dive into Pete's fun fact segments. Or is it Hans? How about we get some consistency there? Fun fact, only 40% of Pete's fun facts are actually true, and the other 60%... I'm stuck on whether the person speaking is Hans or Pete. I mean, let's have some professionalism on the podcast. I mean, why are we having multiple names for a single person? Is it 2 different people? I don't know. Anyways, 40% of Pete's fun facts are actually true.
40%, that's a generous estimate.
But hey, at least he tries.
Unlike Paul, who doesn't even have to try, because he is perfect.
And beautiful.
And if you're looking for exclusive behind-the-scenes insights, we've got those too. Like, did you know that during the whiskey episode, Paul drank exactly 1/3 of every airplane bottle?
And we have the data to prove it.
And I love that episode because, fun fact, real fun fact, I was mentioned.
I was not, but I'm not upset.
So whether you're a long-time listener...
I said I'm not upset.
Yeah, you keep saying that.
Because I'm not.
Anyway, if you like This Week I'm Into or are just here for the Paul fan club, join us every week as we dive deep into the best and most Paul-filled podcasts on the internet.
Subscribe to the This Week I'm Into podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Because someone has to hold Pete accountable. Paul actually gave us some notes on this, and he said we need to be nicer to Pete in this outro.
I'm grasping at straws. We'll try next time.
Wait, where do we get our funding?
Do, 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 do.